Now we're going to do the cutter blade replacement on the Fromm P328 and P329, all versions. Take these two Phillips screws out here. You got 5 screws on this plastic cover. Then I like to just get the air gun and just blow it out a little bit so we're working with a little bit cleaner. Now you want to also get some air in here. This is the little electronic sensor here, so you want to make sure there's no dust or contaminants under here, so blow that. Just a gentle blowing there, no big deal. Okay, then you've got a small circlip under here. So instead of using circlip pliers, I just use a small flat blade screwdriver to pull that. So push it forward, just get under that edge, and it'll pop off. It's got a bevel on it. Set that aside. So you pull this adjustable guide block out, get your little brass sleeve, gently lift it, and this will come out. Now watch here, there's a spring on the cutter that'll shoot out, so just keep your finger behind it, rotate it, and just try to pull it off together so you don't lose the screw. Check the blade serrations. They need to be really sharp, because once they start getting slightly dull, then it's going to stress your welder and your weld head. So there's a big importance of replacing these no matter what, because once your guys in the shop start turning up the weld time, then you know there maybe is a cutter problem and you're starting to get a dull cutter, so they're running the tool longer to get the thing to cut, but then you're actually stressing the weld motors. Look for chunks in here, but this cutter looks good. So main reason I took this apart is we've got hung up guides, but now they're freed up because that chunk was stuck inside. So new cutter. Look for any light amount of wear on those serrations. That's important. Chip teeth, but you want them to be really sharp. Almost feel like they're going to cut your finger. That one looks good still. Check to make sure this axle is sliding freely and these are not binding. I usually just get a teeny drop tool oil, one in the crack, push this back and forth because these things over time will rust up and then these will start to seize, so I just like to keep them lubricated. One drop here, one drop here. And just wipe off any excess. You just want to feed a teeny bit in. Now those are clean. This was the problem with the guides. There's a chunk of strap hanging up one of the guides. So another spot I like to go in here while you're in there. You got a little Fresnel plastic pad in here. Get it on its side, screwdriver, and just twist it slightly. Just to open it up a little bit. Just a drop of heavy oil in here. Leave it open so it soaks down. You've got 6 steel ball bearings in there. So that'll just keep it moving slightly, move it a little more smoothly. Minor thing, just one of those things if you want to keep the service down the road. Wipe these edges off, everything looks good. Now it's very common for this piece of this gearbox right here, a chunk will blow out of there. If it's blown out, you want to replace it because that keeps the strap from coiling up and getting bound inside. And it's a real common part. This piece of aluminum will crack or break out, so you need to replace this whole casting if you see a crack or a chunk broken here, because the strap is held inside by that cover. This one looks good. Take this cover, just wipe any excess strap out of there. Okay, this is a little tricky getting this cutter in, so get the cutter on here first, and then you want to get this spring, get it on the bottom, squeeze it with your finger here, and now it's over there. You want to get a screwdriver just above it, Keep your finger pressing it in the groove and just kind of pull it and boom, it holds it in the groove. Make sure it's sitting in there tight because it'll shoot and you're going to be chasing all day. Okay, this is going to come slightly angled up. You got your little brass piece here. So just slide this into position here. This can get tricky too. Now you sometimes need to go in here, get the cutter and slightly lift it so this thing drops into place. See, it can be tricky. There, you got that. Okay, you got to play with it till this brass thing drops into its hole. Make sure that cutter is not angled back because it will go in crooked and then you're going to be fighting it. This should be floating and then that's good to go. Now this is just an adjuster that adjusts how the guides stop and start. They tend to be fine. It's very rare you ever have to touch this. So I just use a little finger oils on that. Pull these two down, push it on the shaft. Now you've got your little tiny circlip. It's a smaller of the Fromm circlips. I wouldn't recommend buying generic ones. They don't hold up. Just get the Fromm ones. It's got a bevel on it, so you don't, on this one, you don't need to use a retaining ring pliers for this one. Just get it, lean towards the back edge like this, and just push it on. And just spin it, make sure it's hooked, and you're good to go. These are free. Now a common other problem here is you got this axle going through your top weld pad. This clip will fall off and you'll have this axle traveling around. Make sure that this axle has got a clip on both sides. This one's good, but it's a very common problem. The clip comes off and then it starts drifting out, gets stuck in your feed wheel, causes weld problems. Make sure those circlips are there. I'll make another video later on how to replace those pads because that's a little more complicated, but it's doable. So that looks good. Everything looks clean. Make sure nothing's binding. Get your first screw started here. Drop it in. Same thing. I always just gently tap it till it seats where it seats. Just 5 screws with Phillips. Okay, and you just got your little guide cover, your blade cover. Just gently set that in place. You're dealing with plastic here, so there's no reason to over tighten things. They're not a problem falling out. And now just make sure this is pulling smooth. Sometimes this will get rusty in here and it'll feel kind of bindy. If that happens, just go in that same area and just clean the rust and get a little grease on it. That looks good. Always check these screws. I wouldn't try to over tighten them because then you break the blue Loctite seal. So if it feels snug, just call it good and leave it alone. That looks good. And that's how you replace the cutter.